Welcome all to this, the 22nd of my weekly presentations. This week the program is on a restoration of a French miniature lantern clock from around 1720. It was made during the early years of the reign of Louis XV. A young king took the throne at the age of 13 and was the second longest ruling monarch of France. The Louis kings of France were autocratic and were supported by a very strong lobby group of royalists. And there's a lot of French decorative items such as clocks that carry representations of France and of their king. This clock is no exception, and at the top of the clock are the two Gallic roosters, which are symbolic of France, the blue cartouche numerals, which is the heraldic colour of France, and the king's face is represented in the top fretwork of the clock as well. Here are some all-round views of the clock as it was when purchased. It's what you might call a barn find, because it is definitely old, rusted and covered in dirt and dust, but has been secured somewhere where it was not subjected to any form of damage or destruction. Definitely a miniature as it fits into one hand. Nice little clock and in good condition considering its age of over 250 years. A suitable candidate for restoration. This picture shows the difference in the frame sizes of the French lantern clocks, with the miniature on the left hand side being about 100 millimeters tall from top plate to bottom plate, where the standard size being about 160 from the top plate to the bottom plate. It makes a significant increase in volume to the clock when seen side by side. I like to be able to see what the clock is going to look like before I start any restoration of the mechanical components. So I usually attack the dial first. And here we can see on the left, it's a cast brass dial, and there are traces of gilding you can see between 9 and 11 to 12 around the outer edge of the chapter ring. It still had the original hands, which is a bonus, and the blue cartouche are a little different to the normal, which are black numerals, but they certainly are beautiful when contrasted against the renewed 23 karat gold dial. It enhances the numerals in the outer chapter ring and gives a great contrast to the blue cartouche. Unfortunately, at some time in the past, the entire escapement mechanism had been removed from the clock, which included the crown escape wheel, the pallet arbor and pallets, and pendulum and the bob. So the first job is to cut and fit a new crown escape wheel, and here are a couple of steps involved in doing that. The top left is to create the blank, and there you can see the teeth have been indexed and cut, and then the shape of the teeth has been hand finished, and then the spokes cut out, and then finally set up in the movement to get my distances and depthing dimensions ready for creation of the new escapement components. With the crown wheel positioned such that it is horizontal to the top plate, and upright. The pallet arbor positioned directly over the top crown wheel pivot. The pallets can then be inserted appropriately on opposite sides of the crown wheel, and here I have dovetailed the plates into the arbor so that I can depth them into the wheel before securing them into their final place. With the pallets and crown wheel now complete, the pendulum crutch fitted to the pallet arbor, I was then able to finish off the whole system by making a pendulum rod and bob, all suspended from the silk suspension, which is still typical even at this early stage of French clocks. As you would expect from something of this age, with regular and constant use, metal wears, particularly on the click work, where a click is constantly being used daily to wind the clock. And here the click work actually drives against the spokes of the great wheel. So over the years, the actual click itself wears away the spoke of the wheel. So these have been refilled with brass and shaped back to the original, and a new click spring, in this case a circular click spring of spring steel with a new brass tab fitted to actually lock in behind the spoke as the winding proceeds. Finally, with the mechanical repairs done, bushing, repivoting, click work, derusting, polishing, the movement is completely restored and in perfect running order. Also missing from the original purchase was the bell, which included the bell strap to support the bell above the movement, and the finial, which would be on top of the bell to secure it to the strap. The finial on the top of the clock typically is the same as the 4 finials at the top of each pillar around the frame. So to make a replica for that in cast brass, a silicon rubber mold was made from one of the originals. .6040 molten solder was poured into the rubber mold to create a replica of the originals, ready to be sent away for casting in high strength yellow brass. Alloys of Sydney, a specialist in casting small parts, returned the cast brass finial made from my master. A beautiful job requiring a minimal amount of hand finishing. With the construction of the bell strap, or commonly called a spider, I have a bell in genuine bell metal, and I now have the finial. So with all those components, I'm now able to reconstruct the bell system for the top of the clock. This rear view shows beautifully the bell mounted on its spider with the top finial, the new side doors to keep dust and dirt out of the movement, and a rear iron plate fitted to the back of the clock, typically unseen and therefore made out of the cheaper metal. Here you can see some of the finer details of the clock case. The bell strap, the fine detailed finials, the very fine detailed feet, which are quite tall and often called high heels compared to other countries' more squat feet. The little heart-shaped door locks, the nicely turned and replica pendulum bob, the little knight's head screws, round with slotted tops, all symbolic of French quality, making a clock look nice as well as run well. Being weight driven by rope, the ropes need to have a counterweight to keep the rope engaged on the spiked driving pulleys. So these little counterweights were made very simply from brass tube filled with lead to a mass of 80 grams each. And so the clock is complete, fully restored both mechanically and physically, back to the way it would have been in the year it was produced in the reign of Louis XV. A really beautiful piece of history. The French loved gold decoration, particularly during the reign of the Louis kings. If you've been to Versailles, you can appreciate the exuberance of gold. So this little clock is highly representative of French tradition and culture at the time. Finally, up on the wall, running on display, another beautiful addition to my early lantern clock collection. Thanks for watching this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and perhaps you even learnt something on the way through. If you have any questions or comments to make about this presentation, send me an email to the address shown at the bottom of this page. I hope you're doing well as the COVID virus gradually recedes, and hopefully I'll be able to stop sending out these presentations when face-to-face meetings of clock clubs get going again. Thank you and bye for now.